Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, a review of the new A&E biography, The 9 Lives of Ozzy Osbourne. This is a 2-hour documentary that covers the life of famous, legendary heavy metal singer Ozzy Osbourne. It features interviews with various musicians and people and family members of Ozzy, intercut with some clips from various points in Ozzy's life and career. Now, I've been a fan of Ozzy Osbourne since I first started getting into heavy metal and hard rock. So in 1980, I've been following Ozzy since his solo career began. Black Sabbath is my favorite band of all time, and the Ozzy era is my favorite era of Black Sabbath. Some of Ozzy's solo albums, especially his first 4 or 5 albums, I would say are some of my favorite metal albums of all time. So, in other words, I'm a big fan of Ozzy, and I have seen quite a bit of interviews and footage and different things, read books and stuff about Ozzy. So I was excited when I found out that A&E was doing this because their biography series are usually put together really well, and I was surprised that this one was as long as it was at about 2 hours, and I enjoyed it. To sum it up, honestly, as a fan who's read and seen a lot of interviews and stuff with Ozzy, there really wasn't a whole lot that I didn't know. There wasn't any new information that blew me away. There were some little things here and there, and the story is really more. The documentary is really more about sort of the arc of Ozzy's life. So if you're someone who's expecting them to be going in depth into a bunch of the albums, I think you're going to be disappointed in that respect because really this is just more about Ozzy's life in general. So, of course, they talk about Black Sabbath, they talk about his solo career, and there's interviews with various people from Ozzy's life. For instance, all the guys in Black Sabbath have interview quotes and stuff. But it goes all the way back to the beginning to where Ozzy was raised in Birmingham. I found this interesting. I've seen pictures of Ozzy's house, from the outside, but they actually go into the house, which I found very interesting. And there's some interviews with his sister and his brother, which is pretty neat. It's neat to hear his brother refer to Ozzy as Johnny, which is his real first name is John. His name is John Michael Osbourne. So it's just kind of fun that his brothers and sisters they don't know him as Ozzy. They know him as Johnny. So there's some interesting insights there, and they do talk about the beginnings of Black Sabbath, how he met up with the other guys. But then it kind of quickly goes through the Black Sabbath history. They don't talk about all the albums. They just mention a few here and there, and they just sort of move on to how he then left the band and how he fell into drug and alcohol induced stupor, hold himself up in a hotel room. If you're familiar with Ozzy, you know the story. He puts together the Blizzard of Oz. Sharon sort of takes him and gets him out of his hotel room, and her father, Don Arden, who was a famous manager at that time, sort of resurrect Ozzy's career. And like I said, if you're familiar with him already, you're going to have heard a lot of these stories before, and even though there are a lot of different interviews with people, I wish there was a little bit more with people who worked with him directly, like the band members. There's clips of, like, for instance, Ice-T, Post Malone has some quotes in there, just in general talking about what a legend Ozzy is. It is interesting, like Rick Rubin, he has a bunch of interview spots in there where he talks about Black Sabbath, their legacy, how they were the founders of heavy metal, how unique Ozzy's voice is. And the documentary is, if you've seen the Ordinary Man video, the song for Ordinary Man, you see Ozzy sitting in that chair, and there's a lot of the images that you see in that video are used in this biography special. And it's intercut also with interviews that I've seen before from other things. Like, for instance, the Don't Blame Me Ozzy documentary that came out. I don't know, that came out somewhere, I think, after No More Tears, somewhere in the 90s. So there's interview cuts from there. There's some clips from Black Sabbath's family. I forget what it was called. It was at the reunion era. They did a live DVD that was intercut with interviews. So there's things from that. There's also some new things, interviews, quotes from Ozzy. There's a lot of interviews with his family, his son Jack, and his wife Sharon, of course. And overall, again, there's nothing, they touch on all the things, the biting the head off the doves, the biting the head off the bats, him urinating on the Alamo, his struggles with drugs and alcohol, his problems with the law, getting in trouble, rehab, his accident on the quad bike thing. They talk about the Osbournes, the TV reality show. They talk about how they started the Ozfest, the whole thing, how Sharon asked about having him on the Lollapalooza tour, and they said, nah, he's too old. We don't want to, we want a newer acts, and that made Sharon mad, so she decided to start Ozfest, which was extremely successful. And overall, the whole show, it gives you a real feel that, Ozzy, I've talked about this I have a Black Sabbath podcast that I do, Into the Void, a Black Sabbath podcast on Apple and Spotify. Look it up, and we talk about this, about how Ozzy he's a guy that, he seems to be a very genuine guy. He's a guy that you want to root for, a guy that you want to like. It's touching how he talks about the way he grew up, not having any money, being very self-conscious. Like, for instance, that he couldn't take a bath, so he was always self-conscious that he smelt and stuff, and how this affected his psyche and made him feel less or inferior than other people, and how he sort of struggles with this his whole life. And there's a great scene where he's at some sort of looks like a banquet of some sort with a whole bunch of people, and it's President Bush, and he calls out Ozzy and says, and we have in the audience here tonight even Ozzy Osbourne. And Ozzy stands up, and he's a huge smile on his face, and he talked about later how much that meant to him, that he had come so far, this guy that had nothing growing up, and here he is getting a shout out from the President of the United States. And the whole thing just makes you feel like that Ozzy, even though he has all these struggles and all these issues, that deep down inside, he's a good guy. He loves his family. He loves his fans. He has these struggles with drugs and alcohol. But he's a guy that at the end of the day, he wants to do the right thing by his family, by his fans. And you can question the motives of, like, the Osbournes TV show and some of these things, but again, this whole thing, it all comes across as just that Ozzy is this guy, this really down to earth, ordinary man, if you will. And I think Ozzy's approaching a point in his career where, when I heard the Ordinary Man album and that song Ordinary Man, especially the video, it really made me feel like, wow, there's a sense of that Ozzy is approaching the end. He's getting older. his career is winding down, if you will. Although I don't think Ozzy will ever completely go away. There's a funny quote in there where he mentions he'll stop making music when he hears the nail hitting his coffin or something like that, and then and after they drop him in the ground, he'll still come back for an encore. So there's something like that. So I don't think Ozzy's ever going to really go away, but there's a sense of that he is approaching the end of his career, and he's sort of looking back on his life. You see that Ordinary Man video. This feels the same way. There's clips of him sitting in that chair watching some of these scenes on the TV and the people that have come in and out of his life. There's a segment, they talk about Randy Rhoads for a little bit and what Randy meant to him, and it's restarting his career and giving him hope, and how tragic it was after Randy passed, died in the plane crash, and how that affected him. So, like I said, it just makes you really feel like Ozzy is this guy that, in some ways it's kind of sad because, like I said, it feels like Ozzy's coming to the end of his career. And I was talking to my friend Darren, who we do the Black Sabbath podcast. I do the Black Sabbath podcast with, and Darren's been in a bunch of my other videos, and we were talking about how Ozzy has been such a part of our lives. I mean, 1980, I was 10 years old. I just started becoming obsessed with heavy metal, and Ozzy has been there with me, from that point on. He's in a way been a part of my life, and it's going to be really sad when he's not with us anymore, because he is certainly a legend. And in some ways, it's nice that they're doing things like this now, so that we can appreciate Ozzy while he's still here, and give him the respect that he deserves. I think sometimes Ozzy is treated a little bit like, he doesn't deserve some of this. Some of this is just other people wrote his music, like you hear that claim. Other people wrote his lyrics, and other people wrote his music. Well, there is truth to that. Geezer Butler wrote most of the lyrics in Black Sabbath, and Bob Daisley wrote most of the lyrics on those early Ozzy things. But you don't have a career as long as Ozzy if you don't have something there, if you don't have something special. And I think Ozzy really does have something special. He has that ability to communicate and connect with fans. I've never felt like Ozzy was although he is a rock star, he never really felt like that to me. He feels like a down-to-earth, ordinary guy. And he seems to always have that respect and love and connection with his fans. And it feels genuine. And I think that's why people love Ozzy back. And that's why he's had such a long, successful career. So I recommend the documentary. It's fun. It's not going to, for those who are hardcore fans, you're not going to really, there isn't a whole lot new you're going to learn, but it is touching hearing his family talk about him. There's a scene at the end where Jack talks about how he hopes his father is remembered, and he becomes emotional. And I'll be honest, at the end of it too, I was even starting to feel a little emotional, because again, it feels like this, as he's sitting here at this point in his career now, and he's looking back at all these things that he's accomplished. He's had some health issues now, so we know that hopefully he's with us for a lot longer, because like I said, he's been such a part of my heavy metal journey and my heavy metal life, that he is really the true definition of a legend in the world of heavy metal. So so the biography, this is on the channel A&E, and I was able to watch it. I don't even have cable. I have Sling TV, and I was able to it was saved on there. You could watch it anytime you want. I don't know how that works on a regular cable channel, if it's on like on demand or something like that, but I encourage people to check it out. If you're a fan, you'll find things to enjoy in there. If you're somebody who doesn't really know about the Ozzy story about the man, Ozzy Osbourne. I think you'll really like this because, again, it's about Ozzy the person, Ozzy his life. There's not, for instance, there's no interviews with Zakk Wylde in here. It's not really a behind the music type of thing where you're expecting deep dives into studio albums. It's not about that. It's about sort of Ozzy's life and the arc of his life. So I think there's something there for everybody to enjoy. Let me know in the comments if you've seen it and what you thought. Make sure you hit subscribe and like. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.